Okay, we're now live, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to London Borough of Ealing Licensing Committee on Thursday, the 21st of January, 2021. Membership of the panel includes myself, Councillor Anthony Kelly, Chair of the Committee, Councillor Harbhajan Kaur Dheer, Vice Chair of the Committee. We also have Councillor Munir Ahmed, Praveen Ana, John Ball, Faye Block, Kate Crawford, Ranjit Dheer, Stephen Donnelly, Amajit Jammu, Seema Kumar, Nigel Sumner. I believe I've covered everybody there. We're also, our legal assistant is Alison Luff is with us, Democratic Services Officer Cornelia Harding, Keith Brumfield. We also have Jess Murray and Joe Blanchard in attendance. Anybody, if I've missed anybody, they can say in a moment. We've got apologies from Sergeant Edwards. He's unable to join us today. So we go to the minutes of the 17th of September 2020. You may have them on green papers, but you may be reading them from your devices. So I've got it as page 5 of 154. So pages, if there's any queries or anybody want to mention anything, please do so. Otherwise, I'll take the minutes as agreed. That's pages 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, I'll take that as agreed. Or
agreed, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harbhajan.
Agreed, Chair. And maybe
thank you very much. Okay, that's fine. All done. I've had no dissent. So we will go to the substantive item today, item number 6. It's a report for action for massage and special treatment standards condition review. Joe Blanchard, would you be able to take us through this report briefly, please? And I'll try and take questions. Well, it's up to you when you want to take a breather, or you think it's a time to explore for some questions, because it's quite a lengthy report.
Sure, thank you, Chair, and thank you everyone for considering the report. It is fairly straightforward, so I'll probably be quite short. So the massage and special treatment licensing regime, which is underpinned by the London Local Authorities Act, it's a statutory regime that requires that anyone that carries out any of these treatments requires a license from the council. As part of the licensing regime, the council may adopt standard conditions that require a consistent standard for licensees to meet to enable a license to be granted. The licenses run for a maximum of 12 months and always finish on the 31st of March. Every license that then people that want to carry on being licensed after the 31st of March, they will make a renewal application, and that next license will run from the 1st of April to the 31st of March again. For each application, a fee is payable. A new application fee is slightly higher than a renewal fee. Our standard conditions haven't been formally agreed by the licensing panel since 2004. And over the years, we've adopted the industry have adopted new ways of working and new types of treatment, which really need better conditions to be issued. So what we've done is bring all of the existing conditions that were present in 2004, plus some additional conditions to take on some of the new types of beauty treatments and other special treatments that are available. So there will be things like sensory baths and different types of cosmetic treatments, things like microblading, which is a way of putting pigment underneath the skin as a form of cosmetic makeup. So we identified that the standard conditions we have weren't really up to the task of providing a good public protection and licensing regime for the huge variety of massage and special treatments activities that occur in Ealing. So we've drafted these standard conditions. We did that with a view of looking at what our neighbouring boroughs deliver, and you will notice in the document that we've made reference to London-wide agreements to improve that consistency. So those will include an agreement around the type of activities which are considered special treatments, and it's also a consideration of which professional organisations might allow people to be exempt from the licensing regime, which is what the Act allows is certain professional organisations confer an exemption on their members from requiring a licence. The reason for that is these professional organisations have a high level of safe codes of practice that their members have to operate under, as well as requirements for things like public liability insurance and a level of competency of their members that's required before they can become a member. So if a professional organisation has those requirements, then we would accept that those practitioners would be exempt from the licensing regime. So I think that is really covering where the report is. I apologise for the length of the standard conditions, but I hope it's laid out in a clear fashion. So at the front of the standard conditions are a list of general conditions that apply to all massage and special treatment premises and licensees, and then there are specific sections for different types of treatments. Obviously, someone offering, say, electrolysis or hair intense pulse light treatment for hair removal has totally different requirements for safe practice than, say, a permanent tattooist. So that's why the conditions have a general consistent requirement for all premises, and then sector specific sections within those standard conditions. And again, I would reiterate, this is all to provide a level of protection for consumers so that they know that when they're going to a licensed establishment, they are, all the risks have been reduced as far as possible, and they are receiving a treatment in a safe premises by a competent person. So I believe I've covered it. I imagine there may be some questions. The other matter I would just like to mention, Councillor Kelly, kind of separate to the report, but in terms of how we're going to deliver this is we always write to our current licensed MST premises around February to remind them that they will need to submit a renewal application should they wish to renew their license. And we always send that around February each year. So if the committee this evening are minded to be happy to adopt these standard conditions, we will update our website. We will also make sure that those standard conditions are sent out with every new license that gets renewed, and we will also make sure that we cover the fact that there are new standard conditions in place for all renewals, and obviously any new applications that come in after that 1st of April date. The other thing I would mention as well is you will appreciate with the current COVID restrictions that are in place that all of these premises are currently, or nearly all of these premises are currently required to be closed. So we will obviously write quite a delicate and nuanced letter, because we want to take into account the fact that it may be we're writing to these premises at a time when no one knows when that sector will be allowed to reopen. Sorry, I've got the dog whining in the background. I don't know if anyone can hear that. Let me just let him out. So apologies. So yeah, we'll send we will let all of our current licensed premises know the new standard conditions are in place when we issue the renewal letters, which will be in a couple of weeks. And we're looking at about 187 licensed premises within the borough. But again, the committee will appreciate that some of those businesses, unfortunately, may not have survived the economic situation that has been caused by COVID and the lockdown and restrictions. I think I've covered it, Councillor Kelly. Happy to take any questions. I think you might be on mute, Councillor Kelly.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's useful. Just before we go any further, I've got Councillor Ball. I'll call him in a minute. I just asked for declarations of interest from panel members. Anybody? Now, obviously, it's quite a substantive report, so people might have had an interest in any of these places of business. But I know there's a standard regular declaration of interest that's normally declared. Do we have any declarations of interest?
Yes, Chair, just that
No, Chair.
I am a premises license holder in Park Royal.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Ball, go, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So 3 questions, if I may. So the first one is just a very general one, just not perhaps strictly relevant, but I'm just wondering what sort of volume of problems occur. You know, how often do people get you know, injured by lasers, or you know, whatever? Yeah, how often these treatments do go wrong, you know, and so therefore yeah, just to put it into some sort of perspective. As I say, that may not be strictly relevant to the report. The other 2 things were, yeah, on page 8, there's a reference to the licence holder needs to take out public liability insurance to the sum of at least £2,000. That sounds a fantastically low amount if there is a risk of, you know, significant injury being caused if something goes wrong. So I just wondered whether that is something that we have the ability to change. As I say, it does, perhaps I'm wondering if it's been left at that level for many years. And then the third thing, actually it relates to what Joe said about the fact that these places are closed at the moment. Is there any leeway in terms of giving them, you know, additional time to, you know, for the renewal? Because I mean, essentially they'll be expected to renew at a time when they're closed and not bringing in any revenue. I mean, is there any possibility to kind of, you know, delay the renewal until they're actually open again, or is that something that's covered by statute and we can't do anything about?
Great, thanks, Councillor Ball. No, great questions. So in the past year, in terms of injuries sustained, as far as I'm aware, because you'll appreciate this also straddles into the kind of workplace safety and reportable injuries area. But as far as I'm aware, we've only had 2 in the last year, which were in relation to people having adverse reactions to different things which are applied to their skin. So not necessarily to do with the treatment itself, but I have to say one of them was actually a complaint that was in relation to the practitioner trying a test area, saying we're going to test just this small part of your skin, go away and let us know if you've had an adverse reaction, and they did. So yeah, I think it provides a good level of protection. You know, the requirements we have around qualifications and so on, I think it provides a good level of protection, which hopefully results in those injuries. Sorry, in a reduced amount of injuries. The other, thanks for picking up that public liability insurance. Off the top of my head, I believe that should be £2 million. So I think that's I think that's a clerical error, but thanks for picking that up, because yeah, I'm not even sure you can get public liability for 2,000. I think it's easier just, but anyway, I will make sure that that is changed in the conditions. And then your third question, yes, about renewals. So in 2020, we did allow people to submit a renewal application, but to not require them to pay the fee up front, which is what we would have done pre-COVID. Because one of the things we have to deal with is the fact that, for example, last year, I think we had 3 working days notice that sector was allowed to reopen. So you then have a big queue of people wanting their inspection. So we allowed kind of 3 levels of people. We said, you can submit your application and your fee now, and we will make sure that your application is effectively at the front of the queue, or you can submit your renewal application and not pay the fee, and then it will be in the middle, or you can kind of hedge your bets and see what happens. And I think that level of choice for people was good. And we were very clear that, you know, we will have to get to these premises as we go. New applications, we will not issue a license without a full inspection. Renewal applications, it largely depends on their history of compliance and how well the inspectors know that premises. You will appreciate some of these premises, it's a very short inspection. Others require quite a long inspection and a detailed look at the you know, the information that's been provided. But one of the things, the benefits of asking people to make the application early is, again, you'll appreciate that a lot of the process is actually looking at the documentation that's submitted, verifying people's training and so on. So yeah, we will that's something we need to think about. What I don't want to do is issue a letter on, say, the 14th of February, and I believe the restrictions are being reviewed on the 16th, and the government changed tact, and our letter is out of date as soon as we've sent it. So yeah, it's one of those difficult calls where we don't want to leave it too late and we don't want to jump too early. So yeah, happy for any follow-ups. I think I've answered those.
Hi, nobody else is, yeah, Councillor Ranjit there.
Yeah, can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, I can,
Yeah.
Councillor Ranjit.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I looked at the report, and there's a very large number of businesses covered by the report. And I just wondered that, bearing in mind that most of these businesses would be very small businesses, wouldn't it be better to have a 2-year renewal system rather than an annual system? It would help businesses to cut this bit of red tape. I think if you can consider that, please. What is it?
I think it's a statutory requirement. Is that correct, Joe?
That's correct. The licenses can't exceed 12 months, and yeah, there's all London across. This is actually, interestingly, this is London-specific legislation only. But yeah, every license cannot exceed 12 months.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Thank you, Chair.
That's useful for clarification that it is statutory. The data sheets are useful. You know, so many things I'd never heard of. You know, help. You know, lots of Greek words for things and lots of sort of, in some ways, made up words for new therapies like tentuin, for example, which is sort of not quite a tattoo. And thank you for the Wikipedia threads should people want to read up more about it. But we don't actually have all of those we don't necessarily have all of those in the borough, do we? So this is the most comprehensive list. So there isn't anything more than this.
No, that's correct. And actually, this list is something that's agreed by all of the London boroughs. So those appendices lists, they're agreed jointly by the London boroughs as the best way of interpreting the legislation. And that's really good because it ensures this consistency since it is London-specific legislation. And yet, some of this also is being prepared for any kind of activities that come our way and considering them in a way that's consistent with Hounslow, Brent, Harrow, Hillingdon, etc. Thanks.
So you know, field therapy will mean the same thing in Barking as it does to you in terms of enforcement. Yeah. I still haven't read what field therapy is, but that was just the one in front of me. Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Chair. My question was on when you say when you send these applications out or these forms out, is there a possibility that although you've mentioned that some may not even exist anymore due to the COVID situation, is there a possibility that we will lose some of them who may not want to, who may wish to remain, but will not be able to do so for various reasons, or they're not compliant, or they will not just refuse it? So that would mean another closed shop.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Kumar. Yes, that's a good question. What we will do is, and just like with our other licensing regimes, is we officers do proactively look for premises which require a license but maybe haven't been licensed. So we have that going on proactively anyway. But yes, with the renewals, we will be following up with each, where we're expecting a renewal application, we will be following up. We will ask premises to confirm they're either not trading, and if we get no answer, we will be doing actual visits to those premises to see whether they are continuing to trade or not. The other thing with the, as I've said, the renewal fee is slightly less than the new application fee. So a danger each year that, or a risk each year to premises if they don't renew, is that if they want to carry on offering the activity, at some point we say, I'm sorry, we can't consider this a renewal anymore. This is now a new application. It attracts a higher fee, etc. So that's something that premises would need to consider. However, although I've said that, I think it would be prudent this year and fair and moral that we give as much flexibility to businesses as possible. Hence why we want to allow people to have the option to submit their renewal application, but we won't require the fee upfront as we would have pre-COVID. So yeah, hopefully we'll pick up those that are either trying to avoid the license, and we'll allow flexibility to those that do engage with us and say, yes, I probably would like to renew, but like everyone, I'm, until we hear from the government anything further, nothing is certain. So may I make the renewal application, but I'd like to keep the fee to myself. So yeah, that's I believe that's the best way that we can deal with it, but I'm happy for the committee to suggest anything else.
Thank you, Joe.
I mean, I think that's a good idea. I think that's a good idea, and obviously that's not in the document. So maybe we should vote to include some wording going forwards to allow you that flexibility. I mean, is that something we can do, Alison?
That would be good.
I'm not sure that that's necessary. This is a document that's going to be going forward for some years, and obviously the COVID situation is a particular instance. Hopefully, won't be going on for years.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm not sure what Joe's view is, but my view would be that we've got discretion in any event. The regime means that you can as long as you've put your renewal in, you can carry on anyway. Obviously, when you're allowed to open. So I would suggest not doing that, but I'd be interested to hear Joe's view.
Yeah, Alison, I would agree. What I would like to give our premises is the stability of knowing for certain what our standard conditions are going to be. But yeah, we do have some flexibility, for example, to consider, a renewal application has been made and the fee is another matter. And I think that while we've got that flexibility, we'll exercise it to just support that sector, particularly since they've been very hard hit by the changes. And yeah, these standard conditions, I expect them to be in place for many years to come. I could imagine if some really novel new treatment comes in that London as a whole have decided needs licensing, I may bring the standard conditions back to the committee and say, could we add another Annex Z or whatever it will be by then. It wasn't that long ago that it was popular suddenly to have fish eat the dead skin off your feet or something. So we never know what might come up. But yeah, having the certainty of the standard conditions will be of real benefit to our establishments.
Okay, I've got council. I'll call a couple of councillors a minute. Mr. Murray, Jess has typed something up, but he's going to tell me what he typed up now, aren't you, Jess? Please.
Of course, councillor. I mean, all my contribution was I agreed with Alison, and in the same way Joe has. So I think
that's useful.
Yeah, the conditions are standard. The discretion we use and how we choose to apply them in light of circumstance, including coronavirus, is obviously something that we can do collectively. So I think, yeah, it's a slightly separate thing.
Thank you. I think that's agreed now. So I don't know anybody else really to make that comment. So, but I'll go to Councillor Ahmed, assuming that's not the comment he was going to make.
Well, that was actually the comment I was going to make. I would have suggested that it shouldn't be a standard condition, but it should be used where necessary. I don't think everybody will need help. So if there is a really genuine help needed, then there should be a discretion and the officer should be able to use it. So there's no need to have a standard condition.
Yes, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you're managing this portfolio by the council. So, the flexibility is to allow it to be more flexible for you as officers, as a department. Councillor Kumar. Councillor Kumar.
Yes, Chair. No. Well, you've answered most of it, but I just wanted to put my question to Joe to say the flexibility that you're offering, will that be explained to the businesses? Because it could raise, if it's set out really clearly, then you might end up with the problem of the businesses using that as perhaps, an excuse not to do it. Or delay it. So what sort of information will you be sending with the renewal form?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Kumar. Yeah, so that was what I was getting at with we send these renewal letters generally in February, and I'm very aware that the government are reviewing the restrictions mid-February, and on past form where they only let us know and let the industry know that they were going to be allowed to reopen in summer with 3 days working days notice. So yeah, the letter will have to be written very clearly about what we're offering, as in you can renew and pay your fee now, and you will be effectively first of the queue to have your license renewed. Or you can submit an application but not pay the fee, but you'll be in the middle of the queue. And we will make it clear, and we made it clear this time last year that there may be a backlog, because normally what happens pre-COVID is we ask for the renewals in February and they start trickling in straight away, and then officers will go out and do the renewal inspection in the weeks leading up to the 1st of April. So we will have a significant amount done. So this is that. I mean, the question really is around a resourcing thing for our licensing enforcement officers. So we will be making sure that the licensing enforcement officers that do the MSTs, they will have capacity to deal with that backlog. But yeah, we will need some collaborative working with our licensed premises. But yes, we will make that clear in the letter, and yeah, we'll make sure that if people need leeway, that we will be able to provide it, and if they don't, then we will have made that clear from the outset. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Any more questions from members on the report?
Chair, if I may, please.
I believe that's Councillor Jammu. Go ahead.
It is. Thank you, Chair. I've got a question. I'm not sure if it's the right time to ask it or not, but I just needed a little bit more understanding on this. It's actually on the exempt treatments. First of all, I needed an understanding of why these treatments were exempt.
Second thing was, I've heard that some of these Chinese medicines and some of these Indian therapies that they have actually have give out prescriptions and stuff like that as well, and you don't know what those medicines contain. So that was my question, and I'd like an appropriate answer, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jammu. So yeah, in terms of some of those, the issues around, well, I know what you mean. I wouldn't describe them as prescriptions, but I know what you mean in terms of the medicines. Our trading standards team do look at all aspects of that kind of as a separate work stream. I should make it clear that the MST licensing regime only licenses premises for those licensed treatments. So if it's not considered a licensable treatment, we're not giving a license for that. So you know, just because the premises has an MST license for those activities, it doesn't mean they're also under the you know, they're not licensed and, in speech marks, approved by the council for everything that they offer. So and obviously our licensing enforcement officers will pass intelligence to trading standards officers where there are concerns around that kind of rogue trading. And you know, just as an aside, our trading standards officers are looking at some of these premises that are offering you know, some of scams around COVID cures. Sorry, I've used the word scams, so that's not correct, but COVID cures when they're probably not COVID cures. The other question you had was about exemption. So the exemptions is only in relation to people that are members of certain professional organisations that are recognised London-wide. And the reason why they confer an exemption is because of the level of safe practice that those membership of those organisations requires, and the level of competency of the practitioners, and also additional requirements around things like public liability insurance, or indeed sometimes membership comes with public liability insurance. And the bodies that we recognise, they're recognised London-wide. So again, it's about this working with the other London boroughs so that we're all accepting the same standards, or you know, rejecting those organisations that don't have stringent processes in place. I think I've answered that, but let me know if I haven't.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much. And any more questions on the report from members? Okay. So
Chair, sorry, Chair.
Councillor Anand, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Very nice, comprehensive report. I'm just looking at page 72 of 154. Just wanted to know, are these the licensing activities that are actually we're licensing, or are these just treats that are sort of not licensed as well, like Ayurvedic medicine we mentioned earlier, Councillor Jammu said. So are these treatments that we are licensing, or what is page 72, please?
Just give me a chance to bring it up. So 72 of 154, Councillor Anand?
Yes, Chair.
How does that page differ to all the others? Which one are you asking about? Acupressure, acupuncture, or bioresonance? Which one?
Ayurvedic medicine.
Sorry?
Ayurvedic medicine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So thanks. So in this document, the third column, where it's yes or no, is whether it's recognised as a special treatment or not. And the reason that the aspect that is recognised as a special treatment within that type of medicine is massage. So sometimes with the names of the treatment, it's not always clear what aspect could be considered a massage or special treatment. So in here, it's the massage aspect that we're licensing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. Anybody else on the questions on the report? No. Okay.
No, sorry, Chair. I put my I raised
Yeah,
my hand.
Councillor Kumar. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to know. I mean, I have read my papers quite carefully, but the question that came to my mind was that the when you fill in the consent forms, for instance, people will have actually during this past year, during the pandemic, would have actually maybe had health issues, and would the COVID related, if someone's had COVID and they're suffering from, health issues due to that, because that is one of the things that has been highlighted or, has come to light. How will that be considered? Will that be part of this? A part of this renewal, or will there be information on that? Would it? Would the consent form be altered in some way? I mean, it's a question. So,
thanks, Councillor. I mean, I haven't considered that, and I don't think London-wide we've come up with something. I would probably also argue at the moment with. I understand what you mean, particularly what's known as like long COVID symptoms. They often do. Some of those symptoms are the kind of things pre-COVID that people might have sought some of these other special treatments for, but there isn't the medical evidence to kind of put that onto the consent form. However, I would say most competent practitioners would not offer treatment if there was any doubt. The competent practitioners very much, if there's any doubt, they will advise people to seek advice from their GP before undertaking the treatment. Obviously that's treatment dependent, but yeah, it's probably too early to say. Again, this might be something that I bring to a future committee where I say, remember in 2021 when the committee adopted these conditions, this area of practice has come up, we'd like to add that to the conditions. Are the committee agreeable? So I think that's the answer to your question is probably a bit of a watch this space answer.
Thank you.
Can we add them without a statutory instrument? Can we do it? We can do it as a council.
Yeah, it's for the council to adopt their standard conditions. But I would, and I think everyone would be agreed that the preference would be that it would be a London-wide thing, as opposed to Ealing deviating or going out as an outlier to adopt their own conditions, particularly around a matter which is not evidence-based sufficiently yet.
Okay, thank you. Anybody, any other questions? No. Okay. So, Councillor Cole, yes.
Yeah, not a question. I just want to say, as we discussed these issues in the last, I think, our pre-agenda meeting, I think it's a well-written report. Joe, it's well-written report and covers a wide range of services. I agree we need to regulate these services to protect our public's health and safety. I think, as you stated, Joe, earlier on, just a couple of minutes ago, that we need to, or we should consider these conditions so that these services are regulated properly in our borough. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, I think that brings us nicely to asking the licensing panel agree to adopt the new massage and special treatment standard conditions 2021 set out in this report. So that's what we were here to do. We all agree to adopt?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Agreed.
So, thank you, Councillor Cole, for segueing nicely into. That brings us on to item number 7, the work programme. And today's meeting, one could argue it's sort of bit of a tautology because update on new SCV and gambling policies. I mean, we have a policy of 0 sexual entertainment venues in the borough. There are no sexual entertainment venues in the borough, and obviously operators are free to apply for a sexual entertainment venue, but there won't have been any applications recently. So I think that sort of put to bed. And gambling policies. Did you want to give make some brief comments on that, Joe?
Thanks, Councillor Kelly. I will be very brief because we haven't had any kind of significant applications that the gambling policy could be applied to. I did make a statement to the committee probably this time last year that we would do some gambling licensing enforcement visits. We would check some gambling premises to make sure they're complying with their conditions and you know the rules around gaming machines and so on. I think I mentioned at the last committee that it's unlikely we would do that, and yet we haven't done that program. It's the kind of program that I would like to defer probably to next financial year. The reason being that our competent officers, experienced officers have been redeployed and busy with a lot of COVID enforcement work. So yeah, that's just not been our priority at the moment, but it's certainly something we need to do because of the policy, and we would like to do, and I would like that's something I would probably defer to next financial year, dependent on how the country's going in terms of COVID.
I mean, in all fairness, you can't do it at the moment because you can't inspect these places because they're closed. That's fair to say?
Yeah, correct. Sorry, that's my natural optimism shining through. And there were significant parts of the month significant months of the time I'm talking about when they were closed. So yes, thank you.
Anybody wish to make any comment, observation, or ask any questions on gambling policy? No? Okay. So that's to be decided. So that's it. We have next meeting is Wednesday, the 10th of March. We standing item is to receive a briefing on licence enforcement. I suppose I should give an opportunity for us to ask the on licence and enforcement in this meeting. Joe, do you want to start by giving a quick enforcement update, and hopefully that will there'll be less questions then, I would imagine.
Thanks, Councillor. I'll make it fairly brief. So,
what have you been doing? What have you been doing?
Yeah, we've been. So I think the committee will recognise that we've been doing quite a bit of licensing enforcement, and you'll see that coming through with review hearings and so on. Right now, obviously, you'll appreciate that the third lockdown restrictions they have significant restrictive effect on large sections of Ealing's licensed premises community. So probably around half of our premises licenses are either entirely closed or significantly restricted. So probably if we look at them as we've got the off licenses, convenience stores, supermarkets and so on, who are largely unaffected by lockdown restrictions under the auspices of being an essential retailer. I'll probably go on to those a bit later on, because that's really where our enforcement has been, because those are the premises that have been opened. Restaurants, pubs and nightclubs, obviously nightclubs are entirely closed, but our restaurants and pubs and sort of that kind of hospitality industry, they've gone through different iterations of restrictions. Currently, the pubs and restaurants are not allowed to offer any food for consumption on the premises. Indeed, no premises in the country are currently allowed to offer food for consumption on the premises. However, pubs and restaurants, they are permitted to operate like takeaways up to 11 p.m. On the actual licensable activities, they're only permitted to sell alcohol via delivery. And this is pubs and restaurants. They're not allowed to sell alcohol, via click and collect or takeaway orders where people come in. So they're only allowed to sell alcohol via delivery. The pub and restaurant trade, I don't need to say this, but they've been heavily negatively affected by the restrictions. They've severely curtailed their activities. Many are closed entirely and have decided not to and try and modify their approach. But yes, the ones that are open are permitted to operate like takeaways, so they can accept customers to come in and place orders for food or non-alcoholic drinks for takeaway. And after 11 p.m, like all takeaways and all our other late night refreshment establishments, they're only allowed to offer click and collect and deliveries. But again, this is under the COVID legislation, so it's not too applicable to the licensing committee's considerations. So where we have been carrying on our enforcement has been around our off licenses and those kind of premises, and particularly in our special policy area. So we've continued to check on license conditions to make sure people aren't selling illicit alcohol and cigarettes. And yeah, you'll have seen that we have picked up some non-compliance with reviews that are either pending or already been held. And also I know that we've got some in the pipeline. One thing we did do kind of pre-October time, before the second lockdown came into effect, is we had our first entirely council run underage test purchase operations. That was we primarily carried that out around knife sales for obvious links to our Safer Communities work. But we also did some underage test purchases. We attempted to buy some alcohol. That was unsuccessful, which was good to see. But the underage test purchaser was able to buy a packet of cigarettes from one of our licensed premises. So that will be, again, I expect, coming through the review process, although I believe we're considering whether a prosecution under the kind of underage test purchase legislation is also relevant. And we've actually got some further test purchase operations going ahead in the next month or so. That's a combination of premises that aren't permitted to sell alcohol that we believe are, as well as premises selling illicit tobacco. So yeah, that's where the licensing enforcement, the numbers of inspections carried out, they aren't as high as they were this time last year. And that is because regulatory services, my service where the licensing team sits within, we are providing the mainstay of the council's approach to COVID enforcement. So those officers are deployed on some of those activities. You will have seen those officers as well, also supporting the police with the review hearings around the Tudor Rose and Milan Palace that we had before Christmas. And they're continuing to work with the police. The committee will have heard the government's announcement earlier in the week that they would like more concentration of COVID enforcement around supermarkets and retailers, especially since they're one of the only sectors of business that's permitted to be open. So again, licensing officers will be assisting with that as well. And we have deployed licensing officers to assist the officers that are doing COVID enforcement, particularly because of the relationship they have with the licensed premises and the local intelligence and knowledge. So yeah, I think that's a summary, Councillor Kelly. I'm happy for any further questions or areas to be explored.
Sure. I mean, yeah, we can get into all sorts of tentacles here with that update. So if anybody wants any further clarifications, they might want to contact Joe directly. Having said that, if anybody's got something they'd like to ask that they think the rest of the borough and all the members will benefit from, please do ask now. Okay, that's good. Thank you very much. So obviously on Wednesday, the 10th of March, we'll have a licensing enforcement from, and hopefully Sergeant Edwards will be with us. I just sort of like to put on record all my thanks to panel members, their flexibility and working with all the different software systems, and it's goalposts keep moving. We keep getting there. There's a lot of reviews coming, and we've successfully done the hearings online. So thanks for all your work. If anybody wants to do more, feels they've missed hearings because when they were available, they were cancelled on the day. If you just send me an email and also copy in Councillor Block, because Councillor Block kindly does the rota with me, or does it for me. We liaise on that, so do let me know, because there's some people that may not have done many hearings. If anybody wants the work, we've got it, so to speak. Anybody else like to make any comments, observations on subcommittee work?
Yes, Chair, I put my hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was just a question. We got in the calendar, we have licensing training session scheduled for the 2nd of March, which obviously there's now a full council meeting clashing with that. So are we aiming to reschedule that? When there's nothing in the calendar for them, there are always things in the calendar. So
yeah. Thanks for
just a flag.
I guess I'll speak to. I'll communicate with Alison and come back to you all on that. We need to look at respective diaries, but it may well be the other side of the 10th of March now.
Yeah, happy to discuss that, Councillor, and we'll sort something out for after the 10th.
Yeah, and if anybody's got any ideas on training, please let us know. I mean, I know we had sort of IT training in one of our sessions. I think we've passed that point now. Okay. So the next meeting, Wednesday, the 10th of March, to receive an update briefing and to receive and discuss the application of the new policies, which was set last year, and consider any feedback that has been received. So anybody else? Because I wish to conclude the meeting, unless anybody's got any other points they'd like to raise. No. So thank you very much for your attendance. And we've managed to finish under 1 hour. So I'd like to congratulate everybody on that. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
And good night.
Thank you, Chair. Good night.